This is Jessica.
This is Kelly, the Chasing Brighter podcast.
In today's podcast, we interviewed our cousin Safia. She is amazing. Kelly, what did you think of today's interview?
Yeah, she's awesome. I admire her so much. I find her so interesting, just how she got to where she is. Not only what she's gone through in terms of her childhood, but just like this amazing woman who is crazy resilient, faced a lot of challenges and just killing it in the world. I think she's an amazing mom. We've had, we grew up with her. We spent childhood vacations together. And as we've gotten older, we had a great opportunity to even have a family vacation with all of our spouses and kids. And we had a fantastic time. And Safia's parenting is awesome. She's, steadfast, always very positive, and just an amazing woman.
Yeah, she has amazing patience. I don't think I've ever seen her lose her temper with her children. And she's one of those moms that just always has the words, when her kids were tiny, she'd get down and like talk to them and, explain and give them choices. And that's awesome. And like you said, we grew up together. So Safia was a year younger than me in school. And then her older sister, Angie, was my age, and Angie and I were really close. And I think our moms are sisters, so our mom is Safia's mother's sister, and so I think those were some of the closest cousins that we were. So Safia now is a business owner. She also works as a nurse practitioner in a functional medical clinic. She went to graduate school. She had a lot of trauma in childhood, and a year ago found out about an aggressive form of breast cancer, with which, thank goodness, she is in remission, cancer-free at this time. And so this interview does get intense. I want to let our listeners know that this could be triggering for those. It does get graphic and explicit when we are addressing molestation. And so if that's something that would be triggering for you, this might not be one that would be safe for you to listen to.
Yeah, it was definitely heavy, Jess. And me and my emotional neglect challenges, having that conversation was definitely, it was tough to hear, especially for somebody you care about a lot, and to know some of what they've gone through isn't something that you want anybody to experience, let alone somebody who you know and love. Yeah,
and I think that's where, like you had said, the trauma therapist took over. But it's like, gosh, I started volunteering and social working in like 1999, right? And so there are things that, I don't want to say I'm desensitized to, but that it's like, oh yeah, of course, right? I feel like for sure, I think everyone was sexually assaulted and sexually abused in some way. I really do. And then, right, so all of those things are just like, yeah, of course that happened. I could totally see that. But I know for someone that's not in the work and not in the thick of it, that can be hard to hear, like you said, especially if it's someone that you really care about. But that's a tiny piece of this amazing interview.
Absolutely.
With Safia, who's so, we're obsessed with longevity and functional medicine, and she's so smart about how to optimize your health. And she's so great at talking about parenting and positivity and her own journey to be her best self. It's amazing.
She is tirelessly seeking knowledge. She's very curious about the world that we live in, and she's always somebody who has a lot of great insights on all kinds of things.
Yeah, so here it is, our interview with Safia Lyon.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Chasing Brighter. Today, Kelly and I are interviewing our cousin, Safia Lyon. She is a functional nurse practitioner for Prairie Health and Wellness, which is a functional medical clinic in Wichita, Kansas. Thank you so much, Safia, for joining us today. We're super excited to get into this interview today. Well, thank you. I'm really excited to be here. So I know that you are a nurse practitioner. I think a lot of people understand that a nurse practitioner is someone that not only has their bachelor's degree, but also goes on to graduate school. But tell me a little bit more about what functional medicine is. Tell me all about that.
So functional medicine is essentially asking why patients have specific symptoms. So in traditional medicine, we learn how to treat and manage medical conditions. And in functional medicine, we treat and manage the same conditions, but we try to get further upstream to discover why the patient is experiencing those symptoms. And if there are anything, whether it's lifestyle changes, dietary, nutrition, anything that we can do to actually help get far enough away from the disease process that we can potentially reverse it.
And how do you think that differs from, kind of traditional Western medicine?
So I think the example that's the easiest to appreciate functional medicine would be looking at type 2 diabetes. It's, a up-and-coming concern, lots of patients all across, the United States and even in the world. The prevalence, I think, is going to be, it's 1 in 3 people will have type 2 diabetes at some point in their life. So with traditional medicine, we put patients on medications to help with the high glucose, bringing glucose down. There are lots of different types of medications. With functional medicine, we try to help our patients understand why this is happening to them. And genetics may play a role, but it's usually a pretty small part of the puzzle. Most of what contributes to the disease process is through what we would consider to be epigenetics, or lifestyle choices, and how those lifestyle choices impact our genes. So for example, with a patient who may have type 2 diabetes, a brand new diagnosis, maybe their mom and dad have it, maybe even grandparents have it. And, maybe they feel like, this is just the way they were made, and this is just part of their DNA or their genetics. They're just predisposed to have type 2 diabetes. And we try to help them appreciate really understanding metabolics and how glucose and insulin act together, how the food choices that we make impact our glucose levels. And in many cases, patients who come to us on medications, if they're motivated for change and we can help them understand why this is happening in their lifestyle and why these changes are important, and not just reversing the insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes, but also preventing additional illnesses or disease processes that can result from having mismanaged blood glucose.
So I think, to summarize the way I understand it, and I do have a little bit of I'm going to say I have a little bit of a negative view of Western medicine anyway, but like that, if I went to just a traditional MD, they would say, oh, you have type 2 diabetes. These are all the pills you need to take for it. But if I went to a functional practice, they would say, okay, this is what you have. This is how we manage it. But also we can explore, right, why you have it. And we can also look at reversing it. So kind of the why factor as well. And also lifestyle changes, not just medically managing it, medicinally, pharmaceutically managing it, but looking at lifestyle changes as well.
Yeah. And I would say even to go a step further, catching it before it is type 2 diabetes. When we're screening up patients and in a traditional office, they're going to look at glucose levels, and glucose has to reach a certain number before you are considered to have type 2 diabetes. Well, we're looking at insulin, and we screen all of our patients in an annual wellness panel looking at insulin levels, because insulin's going to come up before your glucose. So really, we're trying to prevent disease. We're catching it before it becomes, what we would consider to be a chronic illness. So we're screening sooner. We're looking at different things. And then, as you stated, in addition to helping manage and treat the condition, really trying to appreciate all of the factors and all of the choices that you make, how they directly impact your health.
So do you think that functional medicine, like say somebody has like a general practitioner or an internist that they work with and they do their annual exams or whatnot. Do you see a functional medicine path replacing that, or how do they work together?
And that's a great question. So not all functional practitioners are set up the same. So at Prairie Health and Wellness, we are family practice. So we see patients we manage and treat everything that they would at a family practice physician. So we manage their labs, we do their annual exams, we do their screening, we send them out for colonoscopies and mammograms, just like a traditional office would. But we also help them appreciate how much they can do with their lifestyle, and not just diet and exercise like we learned so much about, but mental health and sleeping and connection and love and support with others. So really focusing on what we consider to be the pillars of health, which would be sleep and movement and nutrition and stress management. Also love and connection. So all of those areas, but in some functional clinics, they will focus on the lifestyle piece, but still have you seeing your primary care or your traditional doctor to manage, if you had a upper respiratory infection or a sore throat, or you had an ear infection, you would go to a little clinic, or you would go to, your primary care, and then see the functional therapist or functional provider for more detailed lifestyle guidance or health coaching.
Got it. I would say, I want to explain why I say I have a negative view of Western medicine, right? So first, when you talk about all of those pillars of care, to me in the mental health field, those are all the strategies that we utilize to heal from trauma, right? Or to heal with depression and anxiety. But I've had so many clients come in presenting, let's say, with depression, and then they go to a doctor and the doctor just writes a script for psychotropic medication without looking at the why, without doing blood panels. And so I've had clients who are like, I'm really worried, I'm tired all the time. And I'm like, we need to rule out the medical. And if I'm able to get them to a practitioner, either a functional medical practice or a practitioner who looks at the whole picture, we can find out, hey, they have a vitamin D deficiency. Hey, they're deficient in B12. So it's just been my experience so much through my clients that people are going and no one's giving them the why, right? They're just like giving them a pill and not trying to help them look at the big picture. And there are some deficiencies, some vitamin deficiencies, some biological components that can present like a mental health issue if they're not treated. So anyways, that was just kind of explaining why.
Well, and I love that you bring that up, because I feel like here in the United States, especially, we have separated every aspect of our health. You go to your cardiologist for your heart management. You go to mental health or a therapist to help you work on that side of things. You go to, the oncology to help manage your cancer. And really, our whole goal is to try to bring as much of it under the same roof as possible. And even in our practice, we're working with local therapists and trying to bring mental health into our clinic, because you can't really separate it out. Your mental wellness and your physical health are directly connected. So when we're focusing on, you were saying, hey, those are the same contexts we use, and we appreciate that. And we feel like it's such a disservice to our patients when we have them going in all these different directions, seeing multiple providers who aren't collaborating. They're not checking in with each other. So even under our own roof, we have chiropractors, we have naturopathic physicians, medical doctor. We have 2 doctors of osteopathic medicine. We have family practice, women's health, pediatrics. So we have specialists that are all coming together and all working on additional training and support. We're hoping within the next year, so by 2023, to have mental health also on board. Right now, we just have a referral process where we work very closely with our mental health care providers. And, even our newest adventure with, ketamine assisted psychotherapy, where we as some providers will manage those prescriptions and they'll be able to conduct those sessions with their therapist. So we're really excited for the opportunity for clinics like this to continue to grow, and even just the awareness that your medical doctor or who you see when you're sick, there's so much more potential, and there are a lot of options, and you really can choose.
How have you seen things change with COVID? Like, do you notice like your clients are different or needs are different?
Yeah, I would say, so again, going to mental health. So I'll just start with fear. I think that with COVID, there was a lot of decision making based on fear. And for our patients, who may have been misinformed or, gosh, this is such a heavy, when you're asking about COVID. So what my brain wants to do is pause and say, first of all, I wish during the whole COVID situation, we could have all thought more critically and less politically. When we think about some of the decisions that were made based on how we were going to manage, shutdowns or people not being able to go to work, or even, people's livelihood, their ability to work or, make money to provide for their families was impacted, whether or not they would get a medical procedure like a vaccination. And I feel like there was so much fear of what happens if my loved one gets this illness and dies, fear of what if I don't get this vaccination and I lose my job, fear, what are other people going to think if we don't follow the same decision-making as our peers. So I feel like that fear, but also isolation, we are very social beings, and to be isolated and disconnected as a population, especially when I think about our kids who had to do, computer school from home, where a lot of them, their ability to connect and meaningful, loving relationships was just altered. Like if parents were still out of the home working and kids were left, I think, unsupervised, unattended in front of a computer screen for a good bulk of the day. There are so many things that I think we could have done better to keep balance. And I think even with conversation about COVID, you found people so opinionated in one direction or another. And I felt that if we all just kind of took a step back, instead of, focusing on our beliefs and our fears and even, what we're reading or seeing or hearing, and just focused on the basics, connecting with others, are we loving and being kind and supporting one another? And we can disagree, and that's okay.
Right.
But I feel like, COVID, not just from a medical standpoint, medical doctors were not in agreement on a lot of things. It was very difficult to manage, I think, patient expectations.
Do you see, I guess, like even during COVID with the shutdown and everything, like you're saying, loss of that personal connection, that isolation, was it a time where people were more introspective in some ways, where maybe they were seeking help in different ways than they were before? Or like, did your client base or patient base change at all in that way?
I would say that our patient population is pretty specific. We don't accept insurance. Okay. We're not in network for anyone. Our patients are seeking us out. So these are patients who usually are very knowledgeable about options with healthcare. These are patients who usually, are more proactive with their health. Instead of being reactive. So our patient population, and even in our patient population, you still have some variance over comfort levels with some things, but most of our patients, so we were a medical office seeing patients with even positive for COVID, right? So we had patients who would come in with acute illness. We had patients, we have an IV suite where we help, support patients with nutritional IVs, and some of them are immunocompromised or in a cancering process. So our whole goal was to try to protect as much of our patient population as we could without creating too much restriction or barriers. We wanted them to see our faces and our smiles. I think about my son, Ozzy. He was 9 at the time, but he drew a little mask and he said, Mom, it's not wrong to smile. He's like, we took away everybody's smiles and, just not even getting to see a friendly greeting or a smile. But back to the question of, did our patient population change? No, we were stable. In fact, we were growing so much at the end of 2020, early 2021, we had to put a hold or a freeze on new patients. We just, until we could hire new providers to help accommodate them, we actually had to set, we had a 1-year waiting list that we just this past 2 months started getting through so that we could welcome new patients into the clinic.
Wow.
Yeah. So I would say there's a lot of people who are wanting a better alternative for managing their overall well-being.
So I know we didn't talk too much in the intro, but you're also a wife, a mother of 3, still a small business owner as well, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So you're an entrepreneur. So you're a girl boss and managing all of this, right? And then recently, was it summer 2021, finding out that you yourself had a cancer diagnosis?
Yes. So I have 3 children and they are currently 12 and a half, almost 11 and 9 and a half. Last spring, it would have been May of last year, I discovered a lump in my breast. Breast cancer diagnosis was confirmed early May, and June 10th of this year will be 1 year from my mastectomy.
And how was that? And so how has that journey been?
There's the fear word again. I feel like we have learned so much fear around a cancer diagnosis. And for me to be so ingrained in functional medicine and to appreciate that most chronic diseases and even cancer, it's a metabolic syndrome, right? That starts from cellular level. There's so many things that can contribute to it. There are so many things that we still have the ability to manage and own during the diagnoses. I refused to have the victim card that, oh my gosh, how could this happen to me? Versus seeing, wow, there's so much that I can do to empower myself with knowledge, with comfort, with love, and with options. So I had a traditional oncologist here in Wichita, Kansas, and I saw a functional oncologist in Overland Park in Kansas. And together, I was very open with both of them that I was seeing both types of physicians. I ended up having to get chemotherapy, which I didn't necessarily want, but because I was pairing it up with some functional treatments like mistletoe injections and IV vitamin C, I was shocked at how well I did with it. No nausea. I didn't have any limitations. I think I may have had 4 or 5 missed work days from migraines. But otherwise, I think, the more empowered we are with knowledge, the less fearful we are, right? So when I had the opportunity to go see a FABNO or the Functional Board of Naturopathic Oncology, this provider, and to be able to do both, not thinking I had to choose one path or another, to be able to combine them to get myself the best opportunity to survive and thrive, right? Not just come out of it with, being with the goal to be cancer free, but how can I change my health? And not just my physical health, but my mental health, so that I can come out of this a better person.
Looking at your life, how do you think your childhood, the way you were raised, impacted the ability to look at it through that lens?
So my mom was a single mom, and there were 5 of us girls that she raised. And I watched her work, 2 and 3 jobs at a time to help support us. we were raised that if you wanted it, you worked hard and you made it happen. We didn't have money growing up, obviously. It was hard to make ends meet. I remember times where we would wear holes in our shoes and we'd have to wait until the next payday to be able to get new pair of shoes because we only had one pair. So watching my mom struggle and learning very early on that it doesn't matter what hand you're dealt, you very much have an opportunity to make a change as long as you're willing to work. And I think, we use that even in our healthcare model with functional medicine. We can educate and tell people all these wonderful options, but if you're not willing to do the work, you limit yourself. So I feel like watching her struggle to take care of all five of us, knowing that if I wanted something, I couldn't rely on my mom to buy it for me or get it for me. I started babysitting when I was 9 years old, started making money when all through high school, while my friends would be, doing extracurricular activities or traveling or partying or having fun on the weekends, I was babysitting. I had multiple families I babysat for. I was able to save up and buy my own car. I was able to pay for my own, graduation trip. I just learned work ethic from a very early age.
And how did that, even with going through this, cancer diagnosis, how did that keep you going? And how are you today too? I guess that's two questions.
Yeah. So today I'm good. I'm right at this 1 year mark. Amazed at how much happened in 1 year. To look back at it, it feels like a little blip on a radar. Oh man, gosh, that was the cancer
awesome.
Diagnosis day.
Yeah.
Oh, that was my mastectomy day. The process in and of itself, I feel like you have two choices. You either let it take you down or you stand up and say, I'm bigger than this. And I knew I was bigger than that. So that was the first question. How I am today, I'm great. And I want to empower other people when they get a diagnosis of cancer, regardless of what form of cancer, or even the prognosis, to just appreciate that there's so much more to you as a human being than that one diagnosis. And there's so much that we can do to overcome some of those obstacles. And I'm one of those people who naturally have just been very optimistic my whole life. The glass is always half full. Life is just beautiful and wonderful. It's what you make of it. Poisoned by optimism. But when it comes to something like a cancer diagnosis, for me, it made me assess, well, why is there so much fear around it? Well, is it death? Okay, well, we're all going to die. No one's getting out of here alive. Being a mother of three, what I would consider to be young children, they were 11, 10, and just turning 9. It was, have I empowered them enough with the characteristics and the skills that they need to survive? And I lived so much as a parent in fear, probably from my own past trauma and trying to overcorrect the parenting I wish I would have had, protecting them and don't let them get hurt and don't let them do these things. And through this journey, realizing that they are so much more capable than I ever gave them credit for. So focusing on their capabilities versus the opportunities for an entry. So this is an opportunity to learn and grow and let them stumble and let them fail because it will make them stronger in the end. So just reassessing what is my purpose. And I think it's to make sure that my 3 little human beings turn out to be respectful and kind and honest and responsible and capable.
So do you think, am I hearing that correctly? Tell me if I'm wrong. Do you think that maybe what you're saying is you were a little bit of a helicopter parent and that had you reassess, maybe I need to let them fail more, or is that?
So not so much a helicopter parent.
And I'm not saying that, I don't think you are, by the way.
Yeah. I would say a lawnmower parent.
Okay.
Paving the path for them to make life as easy as I could for them. And I feel like there's a difference. Helicopter parents are, almost not very unintentionally kind of preventing their kids from doing quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I was, oh, we can do it, but let me make this really easy for you. You know, I'll do all these things and bring this awareness and empower you with all these tools and resources so that it's really, really easy for you to do these things. And learning that's not, I mean, I don't want to say any type of parenting is bad parenting. They all have pros, they all have cons. But what I learned in my own journey is that, wow, if I died today, I would be so disappointed in how under prepared my children are. And just shifting what I thought I was doing to guide them with, love and knowledge, more to guide them with awareness and experiences.
That's interesting. And it's very profound. I think the hard part about being a parent is that it's like, we've never done it before. Right. And so it's like you're learning, you're kind of learning as you go. And I think it's fair for all of us to kind of go easy on ourselves. Right. When we go through stuff. And, I don't know about you guys, but I definitely find myself so often just telling people like, look, I don't judge, because everyone has their own way of parenting. And it is, it's easy to be critical of maybe the work that we're doing, but it's so hard to it's so easy for me to be critical of what I'm doing. I don't even have time to think about, sometimes how other people are doing it.
Yeah. I joke. I have had 39 employers in my 41 years, and parenting of all the jobs that I've had is by far the most challenging and the most rewarding.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's hard. I think that's tough. I loved what you said when you said, have I empowered them to survive without me? Like, what a critical question. And I think about that. I don't know. I think I'm reading so I'm an insane reader. I read all the time. I think I've been reading too many books where the mother dies and then, the whole family falls apart. Right. So it has me thinking about that, like what you're saying, right? Okay. How can I set everyone up that, like you're saying, we're all going to die. We don't know when, but it's going to happen. How can I set everybody up to be independent and empowered, that everyone will be okay? And that's right. That's the concern. If you're raising your children in a way, I'm speaking of myself, right, where you're in everything, right, then how are they going to know what to do if you're not right there? Because you're always, right there. And so I love this lawnmower situation because I'm thinking also about, free range parenting and helicopter parenting. So I'm imagining, right, like this field. And I know what you're saying, like lawnmower parenting, because you're like, okay, well, you can play on the field, but first let me run out there. I'll make sure there are no hypodermic needles. I'll just clean everything up, pick everything. And then you can go. I'll be over here.
Yeah.
And so kind of figuring out how you're letting them into the wild, right? How you're doing that. And I do think it's hard. Sometimes I'm surprised at my ability to let my kids fail, because I know that's important. Right. What we're all talking about. And I think we've said that before. I know you alluded to trauma, Safia, and I know Kelly and I have talked about our own trauma. But, you can't become strong. You can't become resilient, right? You can't become wise without having to experience, disappointment and failure and all of those things. And so, for our children to have the characteristics we want, they will have to experience it. But, it's hard sometimes to witness it.
Yeah. And I come back to the word balance. I mean, there's a balance between that. There are times when it's appropriate to help them and to guide them. And there are other times where I had to have a better awareness of scaling back. Every kid is different. They all three of mine respond differently to the same parenting style and situation. I have to adjust myself to them all the time, and really being so transparent and vulnerable, even with your kids. I feel like, I grew up where it was like this leadership of I'm the mom, you do it, you say, this is the way it is, and you don't question your elders. And part of me at times, I want my 12-and-a-half-year-old daughter to realize, hey, this is really hard for me. Yeah. I'm going to tell you what my goal is with this conversation. For example, we had to take away, so she got a phone. I'm going to maybe get into the weeds for a second, but she got a cell phone. She started middle school, and I needed her to have communication opportunity to communicate with us because we don't have a home phone, right? So she's going to be riding a bus when she gets home and checking in. But text messaging with peers in middle school is just a whole new uncharted territory for me. Like, what do we do with this constant, I call them dings against their nervous system, right? Like a little bing in there. Oh gosh, so-and-so, their little nervous systems are all riled up. And it came to a point where I had to take away text messaging. In fact, we took away the phone completely, and we left it at home. If you need us, you can call your parents, but you don't get to take the phone to school anymore. You don't get the phone. And she was so upset about it. And then I just had to be transparent. Look, I don't know how to manage how, middle schoolers communicate with one another, this constant communication via text messaging where you have to read into things and try to interpret what your friends are saying. I don't know how to manage that. So for me, we're just going to take a break from it. I want you to help me. If you think of a way that you can manage better communication with your friends, just really getting her involved in that thought process of, I don't know what I'm doing. This is super uncharted territory. My whole goal is to just protect you from this emotional burden of wondering what that text message meant. And so many kids text messaging in. So she was grateful to be able to come up with a solution. What if I just do phone calls? That way I can talk to them and it's not text messaging. And if they text, I won't answer it. So really having her involved in that process, to me, that's a growth opportunity for her and I both.
Yeah, I think that's really great. Because I think the issue is, to me, what I would say is anxiety, right? A lot of the phone stuff is impulsive. Like for Wes, it's more like, he's on it like all the time, right? So he gets it taken away all the time as well. He doesn't have the text message situation because boys don't really talk that much on there, but it's the feeling like they have to be connected to their friends all the time. And like, that's their one path of doing it. And I don't like the weight that it gives them. Like it's too heavy when things upset them. And like you're saying, it's stuff that it's like, that's wasteful emotional energy in my book, right? It's like, if you didn't have that, you wouldn't have that heavy feeling and you would still be able to be with your friends. And it's like trying to find a balance with kids. So that's like, it took me long enough to realize that I struggled with my own anxiety. And now that I know what that is and I know how that feels, it's like, I don't want them to experience that any earlier than they have to.
So, how do you think your childhood, you talk about the dictatorship, right? How do you think that, impacted you in adolescence, right? Because Kelly and I had where our dad thought he was a dictator, but like we would, let's say we're grounded and then the next day we would be like, we're going to our friend's house. Our parents lacked follow through. So I don't think, I really think Kelly and I, we could have gotten away with a lot. I feel like there was, I don't know, that was the 80s and 90s, right? Like not a lot of oversight. I don't know. How about for you with a dictatorship, but also a mom working so many jobs, whereas there aren't the eyes on the kids.
She wasn't there. Yeah. My mom wasn't there. She was working. She was always at work and she worked nights. So she would sleep during the day while we were at school. We would maybe get to have dinner with her once or twice a week, if it timed out just right. But there was, it was, you live under my roof. These are my rules. We weren't going to have a conversation about something. Let's talk through this. How does this make you feel? No, there was none of that. But I found that babysitting outlet where I could control the environment, right? Where I was the one who was in charge. I was the one taking care of other people's children and playing and loving and trying to, just have that innocence a little bit longer, I guess, just being a kid myself, with other, responsibilities, but being out of the home so much. I mean, there were summers that I may have slept in my own house, 2 or 3 nights a week because I would be doing overnights with other people's children. So I don't know. I guess I escaped it. Disassociation, get out of there.
Yeah. That's so interesting. So we had interviewed my friend Teresa, and she's one of 8 kids, and she's 7 of 8. And that's what she did, babysitting. We were like, what did you do? And was so, I think she was 9 when the parents got the divorce, right? So single mom. So it was like she got her emotional needs met through the neighborhood families that she babysat for. So she would develop relationships with the moms and kind of get a love and attention there a little bit.
And the children are so awesome. Like the littlest thing can bring them joy, to just sit and color with them, or to play hide and go seek, or to play chutes and ladder for the 20th time in the same day. They're just joyful over the littlest things. And for me, that was a reward system. You would go and you could play with these kids and invest so much time and love. And it really was like another family.
Can you imagine your 9-year-olds managing households?
No,
and caring
not at
for
all.
Children and putting them to bed and making them meals. And
no, there's been too much lawn mowing over on this side.
But it's like, right. So then thinking, oh my gosh, you were so young, right? But that lesson of like, if you want it, you got to get it yourself. So you were just out there getting it. I mean, yes, that was fun, but you were making money.
Yeah. Well, and so here's what's crazy is, people would ask, well, what would you do with money as a 9-year-old? Well, I told you there were times where I would have to wear holes in my shoes until my mom had a payday when I was really young. So by the time I was like 9 and 10, the awareness of like brands and nice things and like even like Nike tennis shoes, or like people were wearing those like jogging suits. And I thought, oh man, I'd like to have one of those. So I would use my babysitting money to buy clothes or shoes, or things that, I saw my friends having that I wanted. Trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Where were you in the dynamics with your sisters, with your 4 sisters?
So I'm 4 of 5, and there were 2 older sisters. So from Belinda to Jenny, so from the oldest to the youngest, they're 10 years. And so Belinda and Cicely were a couple of years apart, and then there were maybe a 3 or 4 year gap, and then Angie, Jenny, and I. So the 3 young ones are the ones that I pretty much grew up with. Cicely and Belinda were working out of, after school when they were in middle school and high school. So they were not around very much. But Angie and Jenny and I were unsupervised. So I was super responsible, babysitting, making money, saving up, going to buy a car when I am old enough to drive. They were more opportunists, taking advantage of lack of chaperoning and supervision. Yeah. So they did a lot of partying, drinking, smoking, experimenting with other drugs pretty early, pretty young, like especially through high school, but even in middle school.
So your mom and the 2 oldest sisters were all out, working.
Yeah, out of the house working. In fact, my oldest sister, she moved out she was 8.5 years older than I was. So even when I was, in grade school, old enough to remember 4th and 5th grade, she had moved out already.
Why do you think you weren't doing those things?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Too many after school specials. I believed in DARE, the Kids Against Drugs program. This is your brain on drugs.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I was scared to death to try anything like that.
Yeah.
You remember the 90s commercial where they would fry an egg on the
Yeah.
concrete? This is your brain on
This is your
drugs.
brain on drugs. Yeah.
Ingrained so deeply in my soul, like, oh my gosh, that is going to kill my brain. I cannot do that.
There
Can
was
never try it.
Go ahead, Cal.
that thing where, remember, because even at the time where it was like, if you drink alcohol, it kills brain cells. And I just remember being like, why are mom and dad drinking all the time? Like, it's killing all the brain cells.
I know. I'm like, this is pretty crazy. And people do pretty crazy things when they're on alcohol. Like even my father, he was an alcoholic. And so the shittiest things that ever happened to me, there was alcohol involved. So even just the smell of it would make me sick. Like I didn't want to have anything to do with it.
So your parents, they were married until how old were you when the divorce?
So I know this is terrible, but I joke that I'm the only one of the 5 kids that wasn't born a bastard. So I know that's my parents, the 3 younger ones, we had the same dad. And my mom was pregnant with Angie before they got married. I'm 22 months younger than she is. So I was conceived and born in wedlock. But she was pregnant with my youngest one when they were divorced.
Okay. So were you even 2 when they were divorced? I mean, do you remember?
No, I wouldn't have been 2 because my youngest sister and I are only 18 months apart. So, and she was, I mean, I'm guessing pretty early pregnant when they were divorced.
And then did you go visit regularly for your dad for how long?
Yeah, we had regular weekend visits until I was 8 years old, which is when he went to prison.
We want to remind our listeners that the following content may be triggering and difficult to hear. We encourage you to care for your safety and well-being at this time. And if that includes stopping at this point, we encourage you to do so.
Yeah.
So my father was an alcoholic and he sexually abused most of the children. So my mom's older kids, me, my older sister, Angie. He did not with my youngest sister, but I don't know when they were separated and when my mom got pregnant, if there was some controversy over whether or not it was his. I mean, it's fully his child, but he just treated her so badly. Her abuse was physical, more mental, I guess, where he would smack her sometimes or just verbally break her down. But the other, Angie and I, he was he molested us. And so the last time I saw my father, I was 8 years old, and he told me that the next time I came over, he was going to teach me all about sex. And I knew that I could never go back. So I was 8 years old. I told my mom what happened and that I never wanted to go back. I could never see him again. The next time I saw him, I knew he was going to do terrible things, way worse than he'd already done. And I remember her calling him and yelling and cussing and screaming. And all of us hunkered down in the room together, the 3 young ones, just crying. And then I don't have a good recollection of the time span, but the next time I saw him was on the television when my mom said, "Oh, look, your dad's in his orange jumpsuit going to prison." And my mom turned that on for us to see. So that's the last time I saw him was on TV.
When you told your mom that, was that the first disclosure?
That's the first time I had disclosed it. So for me, he had done far worse things to my sister, Angie. And she and I talked about it after I told my mom. She never talked to me about it before then. He told her that he would kill her, and he had a gun, and he showed my sister the gun. He would kill my mom. He'd kill all of us. He'd kill her if she said anything. So she held it in. So the things that he would do, he would kiss open mouth, inappropriate, sucking on your tongue and lips. He would touch, he would put you on top of him and rub your body against him. And then when the last time I saw him, he actually had pulled his penis out and was like, touch it, hold it. And thank God somebody interrupted us, came in and said, hey, we need to go. And he had to put it away really quickly. And that's when he said, hey, just the next time you see me, I'm going to teach you. And so for me, that was all the further it needed to go before I was going to say something. So that was the first time he'd actually exposed himself to me. And I, again, just what do you do with that information? You're 8 years old. This is your father. You definitely don't go back.
Well, I think it's, I think so many times we want to think of sexual abuse, molestation, even assault as something so scary and traumatic and other. But like you're saying, how do you know that's not what dads do with their daughters? I mean, that's the relationship. That's a dynamic. Mm-hmm. How do you know that's inappropriate? How do you know that's not okay? How do you know? And then you have 4 sisters. No one's saying anything. No one said, oh my God, Safia, that's not okay, right? No one says anything. It's up to you with your limited knowledge of the world to decipher what's okay and what's not okay, right? And then again, all of this, trauma. And then it seems like for you, your way of, moving through it is, okay, I'm going to try to control what I can, right? And I'm going to do everything the right way, right? Like I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to create these scenarios, like you said, when I'm babysitting, where I'm in charge and I'm taking kind of control of things.
Yeah. And surely if you make all the right choices and you do all things that you can to be a good kid, surely that will pay off and these bad things won't happen to you anymore. I mean, that's what your head does. Maybe I need to be a better kid. Maybe I need to make sure that my mom doesn't yell at me today, because if she's, she gets off work and the house is dirty, that's bad. We have to make sure we work really hard to make everything nice and tidy and organized and clean so that she doesn't get mad and so that you can try to escape any opportunity to be harmed.
Yeah. Yeah. And then your dad, so your mom then like immediately stopped visitation. That was it.
Yeah.
And then he went to prison, still in prison.
Yeah. So after we stopped going, he molested his girlfriend's little boy. And then they got into a confrontation and he shot and killed her. So
and he's in life in prison. He's
life in prison.
Yeah. Yeah. Was that surprising to you, or looking at it now, is that surprising to you?
Well, no. And I think through obviously years of therapy for myself, the word forgive, like people used to say, well, do you forgive him? Do you forgive him? And I never really understood the word forgive. Like forgive means to be at peace with what happened. So I don't ever have to say that, oh, it's fine that he did those things, or accept that, he was in a bad place or maybe had mental illness himself. But to just be at peace that those things happen. And I don't have to let those things frame who I am at my core or the things that I do with my life.
And I think I found the quote last year. It's just one of my all-time favorite quotes. And it is, forgiveness is freedom of letting go of all hope of having a better past. So to me, forgiveness is not about the perpetrator of anything, but about my freedom, right? My freedom and me knowing I can't have a better past. It's over. Like my past is done, and it's like, for me, it's like letting that go, that go of being able to change that. And that's freedom for me. So I like that because it's for me. Like my forgiveness is for me. It's not for, the perpetrator of the wrongdoer.
I like that.
And you talked just now a little bit about your journey of therapy, and Kelly and I have talked about, our journey of therapy. And I love Kelly identifies spirituality or spiritual journey as doing the work. Right? Doing the work. And we talked about that. What's the work? The work is therapy, reading a book, listening to podcasts, talking to other people, having a life coach, whatever that is. What's the work for you?
Yeah, I would say all of those things, like you've just stated. And, even with your physical health, your mental health, that overlap. But what's crazy is the timing of when my breast cancer diagnosis came. So doing the work, seeing a therapist, doing EMDR, really trying to work through the therapist I saw did a lot of internal family systems work, or parts work. And for me, being able to identify that those parts of me that I'm like, oh man, why is that so controlling? Why is that fear so strong? Realizing that, oh, that's that little girl that was abused and didn't have her footing right. And so recognizing that my core self is still very much here, and those parts of me and the coping skills that I developed to help get me to where I'm at, I want to just have a better awareness for how they served me, and not to, say that those are bad things or I should have done things different. But that work was, all of it, just, I guess, being well educated and just having a better awareness, how you have gotten to where you are from a behavior and emotional capacity. And so the work that I had been doing, we made a major breakthrough. Like finally, it was like this scene from Jerry Maguire where he's like in the car singing, I'm free and I'm free, free falling, like that kind of a session where it was like, oh my gosh, I'm finally freed from the burdens of the past. Like, oh, this feels amazing. And for me, I have a friend at work she's a Reiki master. And so when we talk about our chakras and our energy, and self-love is here in your chest, like having that self-worth and that love. And for me, not getting that as a kid, not thinking that I was good enough and making all these bad choices, that led to being treated the way that I was, doing that work, having that session, and then just feeling like, oh my gosh, I see myself for who I am at my core, not for the things that I've done to overcome or to cope or to compensate. And it was within about a month and a half of that session that I found the lamp. So it's just pretty remarkable how it all happens like that.
Any books that were life-changing on this journey? Any podcasts?
Yes. So when you say do the work, I think it's Nicole LePeron, maybe is the name of the author, who her book is called Doing the Work. There was I'm going to butcher it. The internal family system, and there's a book all around it. Peter Levine. He's the one who I learned fawning as a coping skill. We learn freeze and flight and fight, but fawning and how we take care of everyone else. Obviously when I was babysitting at age 9, I was fawning. I was giving a love to these little beings. And that was a major coping skill for me. The somatic experiencing, there's a lot of literature on that. Tim Ferriss podcasts. There's a lot of, I wish I could remember just to recall all of it, but yeah, there's been a lot of support.
And so it sounds like you also, so you read a lot of books that supported the interventions that your clinician was using, but then also some energy healing. I love me some Reiki. I love some energy healing.
Yeah. And I had never done a Reiki session. I didn't know anything about it. She, as a Reiki master, would say, hey, if you ever want Reiki, let me know. But, when I had my diagnosis and I was there was like a series, we'll call it a series of unfortunate events. Like the first pathology report came back where it was DCIS, so ductal carcinoma in situ, meaning that it was all the cancer was contained inside the duct. And we were like, oh, thank God, like that's awesome. And then the MRI showed that actually the whole breast was filled. And then when we got the final pathology from the mastectomy, it was like, man, it was almost in the skin, like a 0.2 millimeter clearance margin. So all these little things, and all through that journey, just her awareness of where I was not my mood, but my energy. Like she would call it out, and she'd call it for what it was. Like, hey, you seem this. And I would say, that's very much true. I am that. And she helped me with focusing on some of those big steps that were unsteady through that whole process, starting chemo. When I had my mastectomy, I had a complication. There was a bleed. I had a big hematoma. My blood pressure was dropping. They were pumping me full of fluid. I was trying to tell them something wasn't right. The nurses weren't really listening. They were more worried about all the fluid I had without going to the bathroom. So got me up to go to the bathroom, left me unattended on a bedside commode, fell, got a concussion, split my face open, like 20 stitches across my forehead. I mean, it was just like all these things. But when she would come to me and say, hey, you need to surround yourself with light and love, and giving me this visual imagery. So as all these bad things were happening, I could protect myself and my energy field so that it didn't take away my hope and my ability to heal and overcome. So that warm white light analogy I use all the time, like wrap yourself in warm white light or warm bright light. So just focusing on the brightness and the joy instead of getting lost in all the bad things.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, Jess and I we're doing Reiki meditation, chakra healing, via Zoom.
Yeah. And randomly, both of you ladies, just so you know, I fell into, I'm a level 1 Reiki healer. It just kind of fell into it. I was going to Reiki and they were doing a training, and I'm like, sure, why not? And, Kelly let me tap into her chakras one time, which was really cool. But I don't think I am disciplined enough yet to do that for others, right? Because I need to care for my energies and all of the things in order to allow others. So my understanding of Reiki healing, right, is that there's energy everywhere. And you're just kind of a vessel. So I'm not, a Reiki healer isn't healing you, right? They're allowing energy to flow through them, to flow into you, for you to heal yourself. And so for me, I think about it, I don't know, what, like a straw or a pipe. And so if I'm not doing the things and allowing things to flow through clearly, right, then I wouldn't, think I was doing my best by healing others if I wasn't doing that work myself. So I need to be a little more disciplined in my daily practices and my meditation. But yeah. So, but you're right. Like finding those, I think about it like your toolbox, right? Mm-hmm. And all of the things that you need in your toolbox and your kit to be the best version of yourself, to be, the best nurse, the best employee, the best wife, the best mom, the best daughter, right? And finding out what those are, which includes for you, like you're saying, the energy healing and doing the work.
Well said, Jess.
Well, and I think also this shifting in what that means with being the best, whereas before I used to strive for perfection, and you can't be amazing in all those realms of your life, but you can do the best that you can with what you have, and shifting your focus onto that and appreciating that your best at any given moment is fluid. It changes, and have some grace for yourself and where you're at, and awareness, right? Don't be blind to it. Tap into it when you see or feel those things. Explore them with curiosity.
Yeah.
and not fear.
Absolutely. And Kelly and I think a lot of people, right? Because Kelly and I love Brene Brown. And, from her, we've learned there is strength in vulnerability. It's the ultimate form of courage. And we want to thank you, Safia Lyon, for being courageous and sharing your journey with us today.
Thanks, Safia.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
That's all for today. Thanks for listening.
And don't forget to follow us on chasingbrighter.com or on YouTube at Chasing Brighter or on Instagram at Chasing Brighter.